There's a storm brewing out there. Not a storm of winds and crashing seas. It's a storm of public opinion whipped up by conflicting interests and misinformation. In the center of the storm, marine mammals, whales, seals, sea lions, porpoises. Millions of these warm-blooded air breathers inhabit oceans from the Arctic to the Antarctic and live off the abundance of the sea. There used to be a lot more, but over the last several centuries, whaling and sealing industries took a heavy toll. Congress responded to public concern for their plight, and in 1972 passed the Marine Mammal Protection Act. And the tempest has been building ever since. To fishermen, marine mammals are voracious competitors. They eat billions of pounds of seafoods each year. Fishermen say marine mammal numbers should be strictly controlled so that humans can harvest more from the sea. Protectionists say, hands off. We should not interfere with the natural checks and balances. Some biologists and environmentalists believe that we are a part of nature. We cannot do without the resources of the ocean. Wise use of fish and marine mammals would be in the best interest of society, they say. In the next half hour, we'll explore the storm of issues as it builds along the Pacific coast. Air-breathing, warm-blooded sea mammals live in all of the world's oceans. Although most are in the southern hemisphere, millions inhabit our northern coasts too. In adapting to life at sea, they have evolved in a variety of ways. Sea lions, for instance, developed webbed feet, hence their classification as pinnipeds, one of three major types of sea mammals. We know that the sea lions, the seals, and other pinnipeds are numerous. However, it is very difficult to count them all because they spend most of their lives at sea, often in remote corners of the world. Experts believe there may be 30 million pinnipeds in the world today. In the past, pinnipeds, such as the elephant seal, were looked upon as sources of oil and hide to be harvested for profit. 50,000 of these ponderous giants once hauled out on a few isolated Mexican and American islands to rear their young. When their sanctuaries were discovered, it took only a few decades to decimate the population. By 1890, only 100 remained. After Mexico closed these islands to sealers, elephant seals recovered dramatically and are even expanding their range northward. Porpoises, nomads of the sea, converge on a boat from out of nowhere to ride the bow wave. These small whales, another major group of marine mammals, spend their entire lives at sea. We know very little about them. While there are still millions of porpoises, individual populations may be in trouble. Large whales, the third group of marine mammals, have been hunted commercially for centuries. The early hunters were handicapped by crude weapons and fragile ships. With sail-power boats and hand-thrown harpoons, it was sometimes as perilous to be the hunter as the hunted. As technology improved, the harvest grew. Steam power replaced sail. Explosives replaced the hand-thrown harpoon. Preservatives and onboard freezing extended the range of the whaling fleets. The tide turned against the slow-swimming whales, and their populations dwindled. From an estimated 4 million whales before the killing began, there are probably only 2 million left today. For many marine mammals, world opinion and public concern for their welfare have been pivotal in their struggle to survive. Two days out of San Diego, the luxury cruiser Searcher motors southward. Her passengers are on vacation, following the route of migrating gray whales toward Baja, Mexico. They've come to San Ignacio Lagoon. Each spring, whalers gathered in these shallow Mexican lagoons where the gray whales come to bear their young. Confined here, the animals were slaughtered by the thousands until at the turn of the century, the once abundant gray whale was nearly extinct. Today, the gray whale is protected by international agreement and has recovered to near pre-exploitation levels, somewhere around 17,000 of them in the eastern Pacific. By the late 1960s and early 70s, public concern in the United States for marine mammals was high. Oceanarium stars like Shamu and Flipper introduced millions of people to the world of marine mammals. Public attitudes were, in large part, formed in places such as this. Public sympathy and concern led to the passage in 1972 of the Marine Mammal Protection Act. The act says we will no longer allow these animals to be overexploited, and will restore those groups of animals that have been seriously depleted. The act declares a moratorium on the killing of marine mammals, but there are exceptions. Some Native Americans are permitted subsistence hunting. Commercial fishermen can get a permit to protect their gear and catch. A limited number of animals can be taken for public display or for research. Before the act, hundreds of thousands of porpoises drowned in tuna nets every year. To comply with the act, tuna fishermen redesigned their nets and changed their seining procedures to allow porpoises to escape. The results were dramatic. Porpoise deaths dropped by more than 90%. Still, there are problems. Some porpoise populations apparently were critically low when the act was passed. Despite 8 years of partial protection, they have not recovered. And here, on the Columbia River, in the Pacific Northwest, there are more problems. Gillnet fishermen are frustrated because the Marine Mammal Protection Act prevents them from driving seals out of the river. They complain that mammals have become numerous and are eating too many salmon. Seals and sea lions have always lived in the lower Columbia. They do eat salmon, but no one knows how many. They also eat other things, including lamprey eels. Lamprey also kill salmon, so it's not altogether clear whether marine mammals on the balance are damaging salmon populations or helping them. When white settlers came to the Columbia, they discovered an enormous salmon resource. They shipped the bounty worldwide. But recently, salmon fishing in the Columbia has fallen on hard times. There are many reasons for the dramatic decline. Giant dams now block migrating salmon returning to their spawning streams. Despite elaborate fish ladders, many never make it. Millions of young salmon are killed trying to pass through the dams on their way to sea. Water quality has suffered too. Eroded topsoil from farm fields, construction sites, and logged watersheds has buried once productive spawning beds. Our demands for water have reduced the river's flow significantly, and we have at times overfished this great river. Bill Puustinen has been fishing on the Columbia since third grade, 64 years. It's a hard life. When the season is open, he fishes day and night. Bill has seen the good years and the bad. Recently, he complains, they've all been bad. Bill thinks that seals have contributed to his lack of success. Since the Marine Mammal Protection Act was passed, Bill has had a few close encounters with seals and sea lions.
I laid the net out in the prairie drift above Tongue Point because I thought I was getting away from the seals over in the Beacon Channel. There were just hundreds of them over there, so I didn't want to lay net out there. So I laid out in the prairie. I expected to be at least picking up a net without any seals fouled in it or anything else. But lo and behold, when I went to haul it in, I had not only a seal, but a big sea lion in the net.
Bill cares deeply for all natural life on the Columbia River. He risked his own life in an effort to free the sea lion.
Finally, the sea lion came up again and went up over that bight of the web and threw the whole doggone thing around my hand so that I was wrapped in the web and I couldn't get loose. And it was either me hang onto that steel rail above the cabin or then go overboard with the sea lion in the net and down into the eddy where I'd certainly been drowned. There's no two ways about it.
Worldwide, thousands of marine mammals are entangled and drowned in nets each year. Many others are attracted by discarded fishing gear. They usually survive, at least for a while, but must carry around the ornaments of their curiosity. Some seals learn to work their way down the length of a net, grazing on salmon. They often take just one bite from the choicest portion, leaving an unmarketable carcass for the frustrated fishermen. Net robbing is frequent and troublesome, and it represents only a small part of the total diet of marine mammals. Let's now shift our attention from the Columbia northward to the Bering Sea, where there are millions of marine mammals in the middle of one of the richest fisheries in the world. 4 billion pounds of fish and shellfish are caught in the Bering Sea each year. No expense is spared in the frantic rush to get the valuable catch to processing plants. Americans, Russians, Japanese, they all come for the capelin, pollock, crabs, sablefish, and salmon. In Bristol Bay alone, in 2 weeks in 1979, American fishermen caught 17 million sockeye salmon with a dockside value of $100 million. The benefits of the fishing industry to society do not stop at the dock. The impact on the world's economy and employment is substantial. But humans aren't the only consumers of these rich fishery resources. For fishermen, the Bering Sea is a commercial gold mine, but for millions of marine mammals, it is life itself. 200 miles out in the middle of the Bering Sea, a lonely set of islands, the Pribilofs, host 1.5 million fur seals. It's the largest concentration of marine mammals in the Northern Hemisphere. Fur seals spend 7 months at sea and migrate up to 5,000 miles through these chilly waters. Bulls arrive on the islands in mid-May, just a few at first. They come to stake out territories and to await the arrival of the females. By late June, hundreds of thousands of females have come ashore, heavy with young. Within a few days, they give birth to a single black pup and then breed. 300,000 pups are born on the Pribilofs each year. Many die in the first few weeks of life from natural causes. More die in years when fur seals are numerous than in the years when populations are low. Scientists from the National Marine Fisheries Service keep close watch over these breeding rookeries. They're studying pup deaths, food habits, and behavior. We now know that fur seals are significant competitors with humans for seafoods. On the average, each fur seal eats 1 metric ton of fish and shellfish each year. Dr. Alverson of the National Marine Fisheries Service.
We've done some very intensive studies in the Bering Sea of the interaction between fish, marine mammals, and man. Our studies demonstrate several factors regarding the Bering Sea. One, there are very large populations of marine mammals, dominated, of course, by fur seals. There are large populations of fishes, one of the most productive fishing areas in the world. If one looks at the utilization of that resource by first marine mammals and then human harvest, one finds that the marine mammals are taking probably 2 to 3 times the amount of fish and shellfish out of the Bering Sea than are harvested by commercial fishermen.
Direct marine mammal fishery conflicts are frequent and intense, and they're likely to get worse. Solutions to these problems are not going to come easily. There are many different ideas about how best to proceed. Some protectionists say, leave marine mammals alone. Let them find their own natural balance with the fishery resources. Fishermen say, we can't afford to share so much with such an effective competitor. In a world with so much hunger, why not harvest what nature provides? To fishermen, blanket protection of marine mammals does not make sense. They claim that such a policy violates the intent of another congressional act, the Fishery Conservation and Management Act of 1976, or the FCMA.
Well, the FCMA and the Marine Mammal Protection Act were drafted really by different people at different times with different interests. And you'll find if you examine them carefully, they do have different definitions, different general objectives, and perhaps different goals.
Tom Kimball of the National Wildlife Federation.
The Marine Mammal Protection Act is primarily designed for that, and that's protection. The Fisheries Management Act, the principal thrust is designed for a wise use In both cases, I think the implication is that they want proper management of the species. But to the extent that one is directed primarily to protection, the other one directed towards wise use, makes them to a degree incompatible. Management includes both protection and wise use, and those laws should be changed to whatever degree is necessary so that that remains the principal objective. We want to protect animals when they need protection. When we can wisely utilize the surplus, I believe that that's in the overall public interest.
We do have an example of marine mammal management in U.S. waters on the Pribilofs. Fur seals are exempt from the Marine Mammal Protection Act and are managed under the provisions of an international treaty. The treaty, signed by Japan, Russia, Canada, and the United States, put an end to decades of uncontrolled killing of fur seals by many nations. Under the protection of the treaty, the fur seal population rebounded. The United States was given overall responsibility here and uses a variety of management tools to keep the herd healthy. Part of the fur seal management scheme involves harvesting some of the population. The Pribilof program is based on the biology of the fur seal. Only the strongest bulls hold a place on the rookery, attract females, and breed. The other males congregate around the fringe. Every year, about 25,000 of these young bachelor males are herded together and harvested. The fur seal harvest is bloody and hard to look at. It may have shocked you. Many people don't want marine mammals harvested, not for fur coats, not for pet food, and not in the name of good management. Others say, we harvest mammals all the time. We hunt deer. We slaughter livestock. The outdoor slaughterhouse on the Pribilofs, while it may be offensive to some, is at least as humane as any other method we use to obtain meat and leather. If you think managing a single species like the fur seal is difficult, imagine setting up a management scheme for 10 different species. The Marine Mammals Coordinator for Alaska's Fish and Game Department has been wrestling with this problem, trying to balance the need for marine mammal protection with the need for wise use of all resources. But so far, John Burns has run into endless red tape working with the Marine Mammal Protection Act.
Well, the Act was truly conceived in idealism and in response to concern about what was happening to certain marine mammals in the world. And it begins by stating that it is recognized that certain species of marine mammals are endangered, and goes very rapidly to including all marine mammals, endangered or not endangered. And the wording of the Act is very flexible. The wording of the Act is very broad, and it is the basis upon which much more stringent regulations are imposed. And it's the regulations that themselves that, one, in our opinion, deviate from the intent of the act, and two, allow us or don't allow us to really carry out the intent of the act.
John Burns believes that the writers intended marine mammal populations to be managed by biologists. He complains that the decisions are now being made in the courts without adequate scientific input. A group of Oregon State University scientists and students have been studying whales, seals, and sea lions from Mexico to the Bering Sea. Using the Aquina Head Lighthouse as an observation post, they count gray whales on their annual migration. Head of the project, Dr. Bruce Mate, says the conflicts and problems are here today, but the scientific information needed to solve them will take years to obtain.
I think actually when the Marine Mammal Protection Act was passed, there was a feeling that we knew much more than what we do. As a result of the Marine Mammal Protection Act, we found places where we need a lot more information to apply management properly. I think that we have difficulty addressing all the questions for all the species for which there's a problem. We have limited resources, limited technical skills, and that to find the answers to some questions about why certain animal populations do not respond, even under protection, with increasing their numbers, it will be quite a while before, or if ever, to find out the answers to some of these questions.
Much of the heat in the marine mammal controversy seems to be unjustified, the result of bad information and no information. For example, people claim that expanding seal populations are to blame for poor salmon harvest in the Northwest, and that's not exactly true. Many people believe that all whales are endangered, and that's not true either. Many whale populations are doing very well. One thing is sure. The intensity of the arguments would be reduced if we had substantially more and better information, scientific information about marine mammals. Finally, there are several pieces of legislation affecting marine mammals. They were written at different times by special interest groups with very different objectives. These differences have led to bitter arguments and confusion about congressional intent. So what do? Somehow, we have to untangle these conflicting acts. We may ultimately need a comprehensive and deliberate ocean policy, one that takes into account our need for fish, our need for marine mammals, and the greater need for a healthy ocean.